I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach parenting all over the world through the lens of the principle self-government, which truly does transform parenting and really all of your interactions. But why is parenting so hard is what people want to know. Well, I've got some important insight for you right here. People become frustrated with parenting because it is hard. Why is it so hard? In this video, we're going to be talking about why it's hard and what you can do to make it a little bit easier for you. There are multiple reasons that parenting is hard. One of the key reasons that parenting is hard is that you're taking a person through the learning process. Learning is difficult, it's time intensive, it requires a lot of trial and error. Here's another thing. You're trying to help a person go through a learning process who does not have full capacity in their brain. And the majority of the time, with all of the teaching, what are you trying to appeal to? The brain. The prefrontal cortex of the brain is not fully developed until a person is between the ages of 18 and 24 years old. This means that a person is in their mid-20s usually, when that front part of the brain that does all of the logical problem solving and remembering for the person is fully developed. So what this means is you are teaching a child something, they are going to do it wrong many times. So then that makes a level of frustration for parents, because I think parents think that their children can learn like they can learn, but they can't. Parents who have brains that are fully developed have a higher possibility of remembering a lesson learned. Now, that doesn't mean that they will always apply the lesson learned, let's be honest here, but they will remember a truth learned or remember cause and effect as they have experienced it a lot more readily than a child whose prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. So the parent assumes that if they tell the truth to the child about whatever behavior that was a problem, and they tell them, don't do this again, this is why, this is what you should do instead, that the child will then say, oh, that makes complete sense. I'm never going to do that other thing again. But that's not how most children work. They do something, they recognize it's wrong. They do something else that's very similar to what happened before, but they don't see it as similar. Why? Because their prefrontal cortexes are not fully developed. They don't connect the dots syntopically. Syntopical learning is the most advanced type of learning. Syntopical learning means that I can take a book, a talk I've heard, a poem I've read, I can hook them all together and say, I see how these things all are based upon the same principle. A child sees one poem with one principle in it, and then one book with one principle in it. They don't necessarily connect the dots unless they are a little bit more advanced in that prefrontal cortex formation. Your children are struggling to hook all the dots together. Even though all the dots make complete sense for you, they don't necessarily developmentally make sense for the child. This is why parenting involves a lot of repetition. I know that repetition makes things seem boring, seem like we're not getting anywhere. Why do I have to keep having the same type of interaction again and again? Does my child not learn? Is my teaching wrong? Well, okay, the child could be not focusing. That's a thing. Your teaching could need improvement. That's another thing. We're going to talk about what you can do to improve your teaching. But first, do you see that subscribe button? Click that button so that you can find more help for you during this hard phase of life, which is the parenting phase. Now, before we get to what you can do, which I do want to spend quite a bit of time talking about, I need to bring up a couple of other why parenting is so hard reasons. So, children also have development that happens physically that's not just the brain, right? So there's hormonal development that happens. And due to what is happening with our foods and the processing and everything else, we also have earlier and earlier hormonal development in some places in the world, which means that children become hormonal earlier. They become emotional earlier. So you're dealing with hormones inside the person. You're also dealing with a person not having as much life experience to learn from. So they're learning each thing line upon line, and their experiences are building up over time, but you've had way more experiences. They might also have some other circumstances where they don't process the same as other people. There are many other factors that could make parenting difficult for you. But the biggest thing that I want to tell you is, let's not focus on how hard it is. Let's focus on how it can become better. Now, I do want to refer you to a video that I created called When Does Parenting Become Easier? That video is going to also give you some good insight to what you can expect with improving the parenting over the developmental phases that the child might go through. But right now, I want to share with you some key things that you can do to change you and to change your child. Number one, calmness. Let's understand calmness. What does it mean to be calm? What does it feel like to be calm? And what can our children do to understand calmness more effectively? So in the Teaching Self-Government program, I teach 4 basic skills to children. They are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. When a person learns those 4 basic skills, that takes care of 99% of their behavioral problems. These 4 basic skills are not just for little children, which you do want to start with little children if you can. But I started teaching these 4 basic skills initially to treatment children. They were all youth between the ages of 12 and 18, and they would come to my home. In fact, what I found by teaching parents how to teach their children these skills over the years is that there are many parents who never learned the skills before, and now they're more effective at adulting themselves, correcting themselves, parenting themselves, because they taught their children these 4 basic skills. So teach your children the skills that they need for success. If you don't teach your children skills, they will be left with habits and reactions. Habits and reactions are a totally different part of the brain. That means that if you don't teach your child a skill, something they can logically hold on to, they cannot retrain the habit part of the brain. The habit part of the brain takes a skill that it already developed. Maybe the skill was whininess, complaining, blaming, whatever things that the children do that they think effectively got them their way one time, they will develop as a skill, and they will create in a place in their brain as a go-to habit. This habit has to be replaced with a different habit in order to be undone. So what you do is you teach the child a skill, and then you help them understand the usefulness of this skill by really practicing and using it regularly, even at times when it's not time for them to use that skill. So this means you're pre-teaching the skill, role play practicing it, giving them some fluency with it and how it can help them. Now, in real moments in life, they will have a new habit that they have replaced the old habit with this new habit called skill. They'll be able to stay more in that front brain direction and activity. They'll be able to think more clearly because their new skill is now logic-based instead of emotion-based. This makes a big difference for the brain of the child. But it's also going to help you to learn these skills. You will be able to have more confidence in what you're doing because you'll know the words and the steps of the skills to appeal to. So if you have a child that you say, no, you can't have another sweet, and the child says, but I never get one. Instead of saying, yes, you do get one, stop your complaining, and going back and forth in a power struggle, argumentative type of a way with that child, you can do something different. You can decide to bring up the step to the skill that the child needs. So you gave the child a no answer about sweets, right? What are the steps to accepting a no answer? There are 4 steps. You look at the person or the situation. You keep a calm face, voice, and body. body. You say okay, or you ask to disagree appropriately, which is another one of our 4 basic skills, and then you drop the subject. So what would you correct in that interaction with the child? Well, they might be looking at you, but they're not keeping a calm face, voice, and body. They didn't say okay, and they're definitely not disagreeing appropriately, and then they didn't drop the subject. So they actually need to be talked to about 3 of the 4 steps. The correction method that you use to discuss those steps with the child is vital. It needs to be corrected in a way that is not shameful or increases the emotional stimulation in the brain. We need to be appealing to the logical prefrontal cortex. This will help the child grab onto the information, create the new habit, and move forward with success. But usually what is required is some parent training. So I have skills designed for parents to use in their correction. We teach all of the skills to the children. Skills like pre-teaching, praising, correction, intensive teaching, parent counseling sessions. We teach all of these skills, but especially the skill for how to be calm. When the children learn how to have a tone of calmness, and they learn how you will correct them and what they need to do to communicate with you and to control themselves in a self-governed way, they become a different version of themselves. They mature. Now I know when you're asking, why is this parenting thing so hard? What you're hoping for is the maturity of the child to make it a little bit easier. Years ago, a friend of mine said to another person asking about my parenting program. So here we were standing, talking to somebody I'd never met before. I'm with a friend, and this person says, yeah, but does it really work? Because you can say that because you're selling this. And my friend pipes up. And she says, I have never met such happy and mature children. I have known them, I have seen what they have done, and their family is so happy. It works, because it does work. A family can be happy. You can spend your days talking about something else besides all the behavior problems. You can talk about the latest great book you've read. You can talk about a movie you're seeing together. You can talk about some current events. You can talk about a project you're working on. You can spend more time talking about things that are stimulating for everyone instead of just talking about what went wrong all the time, if the family learns how to communicate. Now there's a disclaimer, and that is that there's some upfront work that needs to happen before you get to that place. First, you have to learn all the skills, and it's kind of bumpy to get them all working, but there's a way to do it. If you go to teachingselfgovernment.com and you click on the shop tab, you will see that I have a lot of resources there for you. One of the key resources that is going to help you the most so that you don't have to have parenting be so difficult anymore is the TSG parenting course. The best ways to learn what I teach, even though everything on that site is going to help you, the best ways, the most effective outcomes come from the TSG parenting course and the parenting mastery trainings. So find out when the next training's happening, whether it's online or in person, and get yourself there. And take the TSG parenting course. Those things will help you the very most. I'll see you there.